Good afternoon. In February, sadly, we learned of the first known coronavirus death in the United States. Since then, over 80,000 Americans have died and nearly 1.4 million have been infected. 33 million Americans have filed for unemployment insurance. We all know these numbers. We face the biggest catastrophe in our nation's history. Setting aside how we got here, we must approach this tragedy with the deepest humanity as we go into the future. All of our hearts are broken by the loss of life. The number of 33 million Americans who have filed for unemployment insurance is almost unimaginable. This is a moment when many millions of our fellow Americans are in deep suffering. We must have empathy for our heroes, the healthcare workers, for how exhausted and how stressed they are in doing their jobs. Add to that, they may lose their jobs in this economy. We must also empathize with the pain of families who do not know where their next meals are coming from and how to pay next month's rent. It is imperative that we address the needs of the American people with clarity on how we proceed. That is why today, House Democrats are introducing the HEROES Act, named for our heroes, whose provisions are largely based on the 4 previous bipartisan bills we have passed. The HEROES Act focuses on 3 pillars: opening our economy safely and soon, honoring our heroes, and then putting much-needed money into the pockets of the American people. We can all agree that we must open our economy as quickly as we can, but we must do so based on science and data. The key to opening the door is testing, tracing, treatment, and social distancing. And we must do so in a way that reaches all Americans in a way that addresses the disparities we have seen so that we can assess the full extent of the coronavirus and defeat it. Overwhelmingly,
what you're seeing here is, for people who don't necessarily pay attention to politics, a bit of theater. Nancy Pelosi stands up and introduces the Democratic Party's $3 trillion quote-unquote heroes plan, because this is for the heroes on the front lines. The catch is, it only took Nancy Pelosi, 3 months in order to put out this heroes plan? It only took her to pass 4 Republican bills that didn't necessarily deal with the real material concerns of the population, giving them $1,200 to keep them desperate and vulnerable so they'll be more inclined to get back to work. This was something that was done in the interest of the 1% by the Trump administration. But again, the Democratic Party passed all of those bills without necessarily putting this heroes plan up in the beginning when the Republican Party wanted X or wanted Y. They gave Trump and the Republicans everything that they wanted, then come out with this heroes plan, which is, whether you realize it or not, dead on arrival. Mitch McConnell had already said that basically the Senate is closed for business and that we need to start attending to the deficit. Meaning, when Nancy Pelosi put this out, she had already known that Mitch McConnell was closed for business. I'm going to explain the point of this plan. And the point of the plan is to be seen, not to be passed. But I'm going to explain why the point of this plan is to be seen and not necessarily to be passed. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal Patron. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you for allowing me the opportunity to do it. The Democrats passed pushed forward their $3 trillion plan. They're supposed to vote on it at the end of the week. My contention is that this plan is to be seen, not necessarily be passed, because Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party knew right off the bat that the moment they put this plan up, that McConnell, it was dead on arrival. The party, like I said before, had already given the Republicans everything that they wanted in the last 3 bills. So the notion that this, with no leverage, was going to get any level of eyes to give it a favorable look, not so much. Now, it's possible that they can pull some Republicans over to their side in the Senate. So I don't necessarily say that this is without a doubt dead, but McConnell was pretty clear that this is basically a no-go.
Do you oppose some of the key provisions in this House bill, like direct payments for Americans, another round, or hazard pay for essential workers, or more money for food assistance for low-income Americans?
Well, what I've said is we're taking a look at what we've already done. We've added about $3 trillion to the national debt and assessing the effectiveness of that before deciding to go forward. I'm in discussion, we all are, with the administration. If we reach a decision along with the administration to move to another phase, that'll be the time to interact with the Democrats. But what you've seen in the House, Nancy, is not something designed to deal with reality, but designed to deal with aspirations. This is not a time for aspirational legislation. This is a time for practical.
This is the time for
response.
aspirational legislation. I just disagree that this is all that aspirational, what Nancy Pelosi put out. Now, do you believe that the Democratic Party is owned by some other class other than the top 1%? Meaning the same people who own the Democratic Party or who own the Republican Party own the Democratic Party. It is the same class. That class want to get those people back to work. You heard Nancy Pelosi repeat the phrase herself. We want to get people back to work. Well, yeah, they do want to get people back to work. They want the economy back open. And in getting the economy back open, the health of workers matters less. Now, the catch here is the Democratic Party is perfectly willing to allow Donald Trump to run with this, seeing as this is against Donald Trump's interests from the standpoint of polling. The majority of the public is okay with the economy staying shut, I think to the tune of 70%, because they're concerned about being ill and getting sick and potentially dying or passing the virus on to somebody else that they actually love and that person dying. There's some variance between Republicans and Democrats on this, or Republicans and independents on this, but basically the numbers still are in the majorities. So for Trump to put a policy that is basically flying in the face of what the American public wants, not to mention the American public doesn't trust Trump. Fauci is up here with like 60%. Donald Trump is down here with like 40%. But look at where Joe Biden is. If you want to wonder why Trump hasn't necessarily, or why Joe Biden hasn't necessarily been able to kind of take off, even though he's in the lead in many of these states, they don't trust him either. They were not able to put up a credible opposition to Trump on this, despite how bad Donald Trump is doing. The issue here is what the party realizes and what the party understands is that they can put the showpiece up to give this notion that, hey, we actually are trying to represent some, but the Republicans are trying to stop us from doing this. Because people didn't necessarily know what the party was doing, so they wanted to put up a showpiece. More importantly, though, they understand that if nothing happens, meaning if Donald Trump just runs the ball, Donald Trump is going to eat into his polling numbers the more people that end up dying. And that is something that is taking place right now. I'll go through and explain the bill in a moment. What's in the bill is less important to me because the bill to me is a showpiece, but I will explain it in a moment. So right here. A new report, unreleased. I showed this the other day, I believe, or last night. Top 10 areas recorded 72.4 surge or greater in a 7-day period compared to the previous week. Now, this accounted for Nashville, Tennessee, Des Moines, Iowa, Armello, Texas, and atop the list, a 650% increase in Central City, Kentucky. Now, this is in the heartland. This is basically Trump territory. When you look at the polling, older Americans sour on Trump's handling. By a margin of 6-1, people 65 and older say it's more important for the government to basically address the illness before opening the economy. In mid-March, the group approved of Trump's handling of the outbreak at a higher percentage than any other age group, with a net approval of plus of 19. A month later, the level of support dropped 20 points and is now lower than that of any age group other than 18 to 29. This was Trump's key age group. And that age group has plummeted as their lives have been put on the line based on Trump's policies. Let's keep going. PPI. The largest decline in Trump's favorability, March 20th, April 20th. March 2020 to April 2020. All Americans, decline of 6 points. White, mainline Protestant, 18-point decline. Battleground states, 15-point decline. Age 65 and older, 14-point decline. White without a college degree, 12-point decline. White Catholic, 12-point decline. White evangelical Protestant, 11-point decline. White women, 9-point decline. Understand, this is not Joe Biden doing anything. This is Joe Biden basically in his basement. All of this is Donald Trump's policies by himself. Meaning what the Democratic Party realized was that they just need to put up a showpiece and not do squat. Donald Trump is basically running with enough rope to hang his own self based on the policies that he's going with this mad rush to open the economy, even though the Democratic Party also wants to open the economy. Trump is the one that's going to take the hit for this. And again, Joe Biden is in his basement, the invisible man. He did an interview earlier today, but up to that point, Joe Biden was basically nowhere to be found. And Trump has been falling in the polling all on his own. So this is what's going on. This is the reason why Nancy Pelosi is putting this bill out. Now, just to go through the provisions that's in the bill, I don't want to leave without going through it. Nearly $1 trillion in relief for states and local governments, a second round of direct payments of $1,200 per person and up to $6,000 per household, about $200 billion for hazard pay for essential workers who face heightened health risks during the crisis, $75 billion for coronavirus testing and contact tracing, a key effort to restart businesses, an extension of $600 per week federal unemployment insurance benefits through January. The provision approved in March is set to expire after July. Key thing about that is 70% of the people, at the very least, I think last month, weren't able to access those benefits from unemployment, those unemployment benefits. The systems were so degraded in the various states, meaning it was somewhat haphazard depending upon whether or not a person was able to get them. This wasn't something that the government put money in. Because it wasn't something that the government put money into, those systems were rather frail and could not accommodate the workload that they needed to accommodate. Let's see, $175 billion in rent, mortgage, and utility assistance, subsidies and special Affordable Care Act enrollment period for people who lose their employer-sponsored health insurance. Let me repeat that. Instead of Medicare for everyone with coronavirus, subsidies and special Affordable Care Act enrollment period to help people who lose their employer-sponsored health insurance. So it's like, hey, I know you don't have a job now, but we're going to give you some subsidies to help you pay for that health care. This is what I mean when I say this is modest. Like this is not an FDR style plan. Like it doesn't even come close. But let me finish this first. I don't want to get sidetracked. More money for the Supplement Nutrition Assistance Program, including 15% increase in the maximum benefit. Measures designed to buoy small businesses and help them keep employees on the payroll, such as $10 billion in emergency disaster assistance grants and strengthen employee extension tax credit. Money for election safety during the pandemic and provisions to make voting by mail easier. Relief for the U.S. Postal Service, because as you know, Donald Trump has basically been going after the Postal Service whole hog at this point. Look, this is modest. Yes, it's nice, but again, I would make the contention that this is more of a showpiece and not necessarily something that is any real chance of getting passed. Perhaps, maybe on some odd chance, Mitch McConnell come around with Donald Trump and saying, yeah, screw it, I need to get elected. So yeah, let's pass some kind of big spending bill that puts money in people's pockets. Look, that may be possible, especially if Trump feels like he needs to do a U-turn in order to ensure that he gets elected. I would imagine that's going to matter to him more than pretty much anything else. By the same token, going the way that he's going doesn't look like it. It does not look like it. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks all.